have Dr. Jacqueline Smith with us. She's an assistant professor and the director of mental health and wellness in the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary. And she also happens to be a longstanding member of our advisory committee at Drug Free Kids Canada. It's a great pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Smith. Thank you.
You're welcome. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much. So we wanted to talk about our teenage kids in the spirit of this particular context that we're in, and recognizing that our kids may be experiencing higher level of stress or feelings of uncertainty in this COVID era. And our kids are going back to school, and they may be, trying to cope with stress and anxiety in challenging times. What could you tell us about, we're looking at our teenager and we're trying to support them the best way that we can. What would be the difference between, regular normal stuff that my teenage is going to do in terms of behavior and more particular symptoms of drug use? Like, how does a parent tell that, their kid's on the healthy way and everything is going okay and it's just normal, whereas, I may have some concerns right now, maybe by the way that they're coping with stress and anxiety and maybe turning to substance use?
Okay. Well, wow, that's a loaded question. I think this is such an important conversation, because when we think of adolescents, they're already going through neurologically emotional development. I mean, that's part of their developmental stage. So putting that alongside COVID, that has just brought in an unprecedented event in our lives. I think it's a time when we really have to be aware. Now, it's complicated because it's not just the adolescents who are being stressed, it's families in general. And so our families are being disrupted, with financial pressures, with loss of childcare, and it's being able to, as parents, cut ourselves a little bit of slack as well, knowing that having our children at home 24/7 and possibly being away from work that we really enjoy can impact our experience and our relationship with our children as well. So I think the most important thing we can do as parents is just being self-aware. So I want to put that up front. And there's no right or wrong. You are the expert in that relationship with your children. So it's so important, and you know your children well. Every child is individual. So it's really being able to, when we start talking about children, looking to substances to really emotionally regulate. Again, they're going through emotional development and they're looking for ways to feel better. So amid that, they're also high risk takers. That invincibility component is there as well. And they don't see choice always with consequence. Sometimes it's a bit of a delayed response. Mm-hmm. So it's being also aware of parents that this is a normal part of our adolescents' development. They are high risk takers. They're curious. So it's about having conversations with your children, understanding those things as well, and start looking for behaviors that are not typical of your young people. Keeping in mind, though, that COVID is also present. So in general, when you look at the reasons why, the research says the reasons why kids are using, and this is research that has included young people as well. So they've been able to share with us why. And most of the young people are saying that they start using substances just to forget about their problems. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of problems going on right now. So they want to blur what's going on and just self-medicate. They're also looking for the experience of being social with their young people, so with their peers. So interestingly enough, this is not happening now in that face-to-face, but that's happening in interactions via social media. They're also looking to expand their cognitive and creative ability. And we do know that drugs and alcohol will do that. It will, depending on the drug that you're taking as well. And just again, this conformity and bottom line is many of our young people are saying they just like the feeling. So I just wanted to position where the kids are coming from. Typically when kids start using, and if you've already had those conversations that this is not something that you are promoting, then you're going to start seeing secrecy. So the kids will not be sharing some of those interactions with their with their friends. They might start pulling away from the family. If you have been a close-knit family and did activities together, you might start seeing drop in grades in the school, a lack of interest in those activities that used to be important to them, like sports, and maybe if they're in band. So just a shift in what's normal. Understanding again that shifts occur, but if they're consistent and they're progressing, that's a red flag.
Okay, so going back to being able to support parents and saying, okay, so this is an area of concern, because what I'm hearing from you is it's normal in teenage years to experiment. There may be different reasons why they will be doing that. When it starts being concerning about those signs that you said is if the shifts are consistent and if they're increasing. So, but it's a matter of a parent being able to assess what their kids are usually like, and if there's a shift from that may be. So would you say then that how would a parent approach their kids if they are seeing those signs? What's the best way of doing that?
The best way is to start broad. Because our kids, we don't want to give them a sense of that we're confronting and kind of attacking. So they already know typically our bottom line for a lack of tolerance of drugs and alcohol, and it's because of our protective instinct. So it's being able to step in from a point of curiosity. So as an example, Johnny, I was watching the news tonight, and they're saying that methamphetamine or meth is a drug that a lot of young people are using. And I would have thought that cannabis would have been more popular. So what do you find with your friends? Are you finding that they're starting to talk a little bit about meth? Because I know there must be a lot of conversations around cannabis. So do you see what I'm doing? Normalizing the cannabis because it's legalized. It's a big issue for the young people right now, but also bringing in other drugs, and methamphetamine is a huge concern right now. Mm-hmm. So you allow your kids to speak broadly, and perhaps within that conversation, they may bring up a friend. They won't name the friend. Sometimes that friend is actually themselves. They feel safe in talking about their friend versus themselves. So so being non-confrontational and being an educated parent, like go in with the facts and have your kids think, okay, and non-confrontational, and just open it up. Most important is that let them do most of the talking. Introduce it. Be good listeners. Listening is authentic. You know, I really love this quote, and it's by George Couros, and he said, "To inspire meaningful change, you must make a connection to the heart before you can make one to the mind." So if you have it in your mind, if your objective is to shift your kids' thinking, then you really have to be authentic and come in from a place of concern.
Mm-hmm.
And authenticity as well too, so important. So again, broad and narrow it in and let them navigate where they want to go.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not all going to happen in one conversation. Maybe, I mean, we're talking a lot about the importance of having dinner together as a family. And this could be a conversation that you could bring up with, say, your 13-year-old while your 7-year-old is also listening.
Mm-hmm.
So the dinner table is an amazing context for conversations like this that can become a normal part of your family dynamics, but yet incredibly therapeutic.
I love this point because we started by saying, what if all of a sudden I'm concerned because I'm noticing that there's a recurrent, increasing in intensity, change in behavior. How do I address that? How do I go? But we're taught, like, now the way that I'm hearing you is, you know what, like, start sooner than that. Don't wait until you have concerns. Use the news, use whatever you see as a current event as an excuse to be able to engage in those conversations. So when time comes, if you ever have specific concerns, it won't come out of left field because you have established that trust, but you also have established that conversation of the subject matter, so they're not feeling completely blindsided because you're talking about it. So I think that's a very good point.
Normal, healthy family conversations. It's not a one-off, like you say. It's not when the problem. You be a proactive and a preventative parent as well too, and start those conversations, I would say, early.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about things to look at in terms of change of behavior. Is there any specific risk factor, additional risk factors that parents should be aware of so that maybe their kids is more susceptible to turn to substance use as a coping mechanism? Is there anything that we could, share with our parents out there about specific risk factors?
Really, really important. One is family predisposition. So if you as a parent have a family history of substance use abuse, or I would say mental health, because what we're seeing is that a lot of people who have substance use disorders also have co-occurring mental health issues. But most important is a family history, and being able to allow that to be a part of the conversation. This is where the authenticity comes in. If you are an adult child of a parent, being able to open up that conversation and say, I really want to be honest with you. You know that granddad struggled with alcohol, and it was really difficult in our family. And what I do know is that when addiction is in the family, there's a higher risk for other family members, and you may wonder why this is a conversation with your child. You may wonder why I'm bringing this up, but it makes me as a parent a bit concerned, because that means you are actually more at risk of developing a problem because granddad did. And then that's just a great doorway. And I think what's really important, and you mentioned it earlier, fear mongering and just say no does not work. And our young people are telling us that. Parents say to me, so how do you do it? Well, it's about saying drugs and alcohol actually can give you a sense of euphoria and high, and it can be an escape. Yet there's also risks attached to it as well. And then again, so just a doorway, say a little bit, and then you could say, have you ever seen any of your friends or someone you know of? Did you ever see someone have a problem? Maybe it's a DUI you just saw in the news the night before a young person died. So you can actually be very strategic and purposeful about those conversations. So I would say go in prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And and but yet also um, share your vulnerability if your child asks about something, and say, that's a really good question, and I don't know if I can answer that, but I'm really going to go away and think about that. They might ask you about what was it like for your dad, and you might not be prepared for that. So if you're going to open it up, so being prepared for some of those conversations. And I know that drug-free kids Canada has a plethora of resources that parents can go to, and help set up those type of conversations as well, so they're not on their own.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for mentioning that. But the approach is as well, like we want parents to come in and, you know, find the information they need and feel better equipped to talk to their kids. But we also want parents to not feel intimidated to start those conversations. And you're right, when it comes about, you know, having a candid heart-to-heart conversation about saying, you know, my father acted in such a way, or my grandfather acted such a way, that's how it made me feel. And if all of a sudden your kid is asking you a question that you didn't prepare for, to be able to take, like, not fall into panic mode, and to be able to go say, you know what, that's a really good question, and I think I need some time to think about it. Let's talk about it again in a couple days, right? But that's also modeling and teaching your kids that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to go on just an emotional response, and being able to say, I need to think about that one. So that's a valid point. So we talked about risk factors. Let's go to the flip side of that. Are there any protective factors? You talked about dinner at the dinner table, and God knows I have two busy teenagers myself, and it's not always easy.
Yes.
We can't do it every night, but we try to do it as much as we can. But is there any other, because I'm attaching basically family dinners with a sense of connection. Is there any other protective factors that parents should really nurture and develop with their kids to better equip them to make healthy decisions?
Wow, these are such great conversations, and I appreciate your feedback as well too, because I think about so many different things. I think one, as parents, we are our children's models. They are looking at us. In fact, the research says that our children are most impressionable to the influence of parents in early adolescence. So doesn't mean that you can't do it before or after, but I think we need to know that our kids are watching our actions. They're listening to our conversations, and they're hearing and experiencing even our tone of voice. Um, and they're observing, most important, our coping strategies. So this is a time, again, for parents, again, not to beat themselves up, but it's a time for self-reflection. So how healthy are our coping mechanisms? Are we using exercise for stress, gardening, um, talking to friends, or maybe is that one glass of wine that we were having maybe when we were coming home from work turning into 2 and 3 glasses of wine. So it's about being prepared for those conversations, and even with the first glass of wine, being able to talk to your kids that, you know, when maybe your family, not the alcoholic family, just say, you know, when I grew up, grandma and grandpa would have a glass of wine at the meal, and I've just learned that as well. Yet it's something that they approved for me to do once I turned 18, and talk about the feelings, and then it could be another conversation where I mean, the progression of substance use can go from substance use where you're using it just to have fun, and the abuse where you're starting to get into trouble. You know, parents are bringing things up, your grades are going down, you start thinking, oh, maybe I should pull back. And then there's those who don't pull back, many do, and you start using more regularly, and you really start to experience, you continue to use despite negative experiences in your life. So see what I just did? I just explained the continuum of a substance use. So use, abuse, addiction. So again, that's an example of within a conversation being able to do that. And you could say, do you know anybody who maybe has just used on occasion, or are you worried about anybody who is using and getting into trouble, but just doesn't care and keeps using? So, and I really liked what you said before. You pointed out that vulnerability is normal, because I think I'm a strong advocate of being able to teach our kids about emotional regulation and even using that language, because they're going through emotional development. And I remember doing a presentation to a group of young people, and I talked about the natural endorphins that we get from exercise, and the serotonin, that feel good neuroreceptor. And I had a high school student come up to me after, and he goes, wow, I always used to wonder why I felt so good after those volleyball games. So, young people like the science. They really like to know how their body experiences stress, and teaching. And I think we can teach simple things like the breath. The breath can be so grounding. So, will they be open to that? This week I had someone contact me and explain that they had an anxiety attack, and they had never had that before. So I was worried about the person. So I said, tell me about what you did. And we talked it through. And after, I actually sent them a grounding exercises, and it's called the 5 things. And young people can relate to this. So if they're really stressed, maybe before an exam, or a friend says, let's go out and have a joint, and you don't want to do it. And, you could take time, go into the bathroom and close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think about 5 things that you can see. So actually, instead of the bathroom, let's say you're outside. So 5 things you can see. 4 things you can feel. So your feet on the floor, your hair on the back of your head. 3 things you can hear. Might be traffic. 2 things you can smell. And 1 thing you can taste. And maybe it was just your lunch. So what you're doing is you're teaching your children that anxiety is normal. It's being able to find ways to ground and to de-stress. I can't say how important those tools are.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that growing up.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a lot of that at the university right now. I just did a presentation on emotional wellness at the university. 260 people signed up, and it's all about these tools, these self-care tools. So they can, they can be fun as well. And it's about having conversations. And I remember actually doing this with my daughter, and this is actually a very solution focused. So we have to balance the intensity of what's going on, like COVID, or starting school, and they're going to be exposed to drugs. So it's, you can say, so this is so great for us just to sit down, and maybe you're out for a bike ride. So just tell me 3 other people you could talk to if you were stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious, what 3 things do you like about yourself? I think you're amazing. But I'm curious, what 3, and what 3 things do you really like to do? I see this and that, but I'm also seeing, so like those are questions that are based on curiosity and authenticity. Like you're getting to know your kids, and what, they like to talk about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they like to know that you're interested and you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
So so again, and that's, that's such a simple but powerful strategy, and
Yes.
one that may inform a, yeah, sure, Mom, let's go for another walk. I really enjoyed that walk last night. So it's, again, opening up. It doesn't have to be stressful. Sometimes we get really stressed and young people, but it can just be just really casual and authentic as well.
I agree, and I also like the point that you've made about being self-aware and not coming at it with all the answers. You know, at the beginning of COVID, as you said, a lot of people would, you know, on a Friday, you come back home, you open a bottle of wine and you start, you know, cooking with but all of a sudden we were all home, and then you go in the kitchen and, you know, Friday turns into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And all of a sudden that self-awareness, but being able to be honest with your kids and saying, I think that, you know, I'm starting to have a glass of wine too many, and it's my go-to as, why don't I just don't have a glass of wine tonight and you and I go for a walk? But being able to admit that so that kids see that, you know, we don't always make the best decisions for ourselves, but it's a matter of self-acknowledging it and being like self-aware, and then being able to say there's other options. How about we explore them together? So I think that you're raising a very valid point. We are almost out of time. There's one question that I need to ask you. So we've talked about risk factors and protective factors, and you've stressed out the importance of having ongoing, authentic conversation with our kids. But let's say that we're doing all this, and all of a sudden we're seeing that, you know, there's still areas of concern, and we're afraid that our teenager may not be making the best decision when it comes to health, and we have concerns about substance misuse. At what point do we seek professional help? At what point is it really time to, you know, we're saying don't be alarmed and have, you know, those open conversations, but at what point is it, okay, now I need professional help to help us through this?
I think it's exactly when you start feeling uncomfortable and you start thinking, oh, is this a problem? I don't think it's ever too early to do that. And maybe seeking help might be first just for you to have a sounding board. Speak. So you, as parents, we need to be resourceful. We need to know where the credible resources are and professionals who understand substance use. And I've done that. I certainly have reached out to professionals and have said, you know, this is what I'm seeing. Should I be concerned? And so you already have. So what you're doing is you are building your tool belt, your tool belt of resources. So, and it's always good to pass it by someone who knows more than you. So I would say use your gut instincts and know, like, the risks. If there's addiction in your family, chances are what you're seeing may be a problem. And you know, you could go to a professional and they might say, you know what, that's pretty normal teenage behavior. But if this happens, I think we should have another conversation. So it's kind of like creating a roadmap for yourself as a parent and knowing. And the bottom line is you do the best that you can with what you have. And there's times, I mean, I've met incredible families who never in their wildest dreams would have imagined that their children had developed a problem with substance use, but they got through it. And resilience is amazing. So you can get through it. You don't have to do it alone. Know your resources, reach out, and just take one step at a time and navigate it and keep the communication open. If you start to see something, don't shut down with your kids. That's the time. And that's why all this preventative conversation that you had beforehand, when the problem hits, you can still keep the conversation over. It might be a little different, and it's okay to express your concerns. You know, I'm a bit scared. I'm seeing you were so interested in sports last year, and now you don't want to play, and you're kind of pulling away from the family, and I'm worried. Can you tell me what's going on? Like, that's okay too. It is okay. Difficult situation, but a really important one, and authentic, and coming from, again, a place, remember, to inspire meaningful change, you must make a connection to the heart before you can make one to the mind. So it's not about embarrassment, shame, all that. It's about you are concerned. You love
Caring.
yourself. Caring, compassion,
Mhm.
unconditional love.
Mhm.
Really important.
That's a great way of ending our talk, Dr. Smith. We could have talked about it for ends on ends. It was very interesting and very engaging, and I'm sure that our parents will benefit from it greatly. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome.